finally the day, the first podcast of the 𝐉𝐨𝐢𝐧 show. I'm joined here by Mr. Derek. Derek, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Right. What to look over that?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
For the intro, might as well.
Yeah, I'm Derek Lam, assistant professor in philosophy in Sac State. Derek Lam. I moved here last year from Wisconsin. I taught a few years philosophy in Wisconsin before I moved here. I'm from Hong Kong originally. And got a bachelor
cool.
there.
I know that.
Yeah, doing philosophy there. Oh, you didn't know that? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's where I got my bachelor, and then I did my master in Europe, Germany and Luxembourg. Actually, I started my doctoral studies in Germany, and then I got bored with Germany. Oh, Germany is so boring. Yeah.
Really? Germany.
I'm gonna irritate some of you. Yeah, it's really boring. So it's gloomy. So after a year, I got sick of it, so I moved to the US, did my PhD in Virginia.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very interesting background.
Mm-hmm.
So you said it was boring. Like, in what sense? Like, their main type of philosophy was like not very intriguing to you?
Yeah, I guess it's a very complicated issue. There are a few aspects in it. First of all, it's the cultural aspect. It's boring in a more straightforward sense. Is that whenever I switch on the TV in Germany, it's like documentaries, Second World War and I'm like, I know you guys are guilty.
Get on over it, yeah.
Yeah, and then they have TV shows, but it's like not particularly entertaining. Songs. So it's like on a shell level, it's not particularly interesting, but also the academia in Germany. People might have different views about that. It's just my experience. My experience of it is extremely hierarchical, and for those who know me, knows that I hate hierarchy with a passion. So I just feel like unhappy there. So hierarchical in the sense that like, suppose you get a doctoral degree, your first job is going to be an assistant to another professor. Not assistant professor, but assistant to a professor. So
there's a difference in that?
Yeah, like so you have to do the kind of work your boss want to do.
Administrative work?
No, like your research would be part of that research. Personal connection is very important. So I hate those kind of stuff. Like, so that's why I find it not stimulating enough and boring. So that's why.
You'd like to be judged off of your own work instead of like what someone else has control over.
Yeah, it feels a little bit too much of that, especially as a foreigner. That's a huge disadvantage. So,
yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
What about differences between Hong Kong and Sacramento?
Hong Kong is much bigger. I think Hong Kong has that. Well, at least back when I was in Hong Kong, like I heard that Hong Kong changed a lot. It was almost 10 years ago since I was back, so. Things probably are different now for various reasons. But when I was growing up, Hong Kong feels like New York kind of intensity. So in that sense, it's very different from Sacramento. Sacramento feels more calm. Basically, the exciting things is within like a few blocks area. Everything is kind of walkable.
Yeah.
So that part is very different from Hong Kong. But Hong Kong also the Hong Kong that I grew up in feels safer
than here?
Yeah. So but at the same time, it's because I was a kid. Like everything is taken care of for me by the adults. So I think there's also that. So it may not be fair.
Yeah. So you were born in Hong Kong?
Yeah, born.
Gotcha.
I got my bachelor there.
Yeah. And then you left for your
my master degree in Europe.
Master.
Yes.
Okay, 1 year in masters in
2
Germany.
years master. I started a PhD in Germany, but I got fed up, so
gotcha.
To the US. Yeah.
And how long have you been at Sac State again?
This is my second year. So
second year.
And a half.
How's it going?
Been alright. I'm settling down in Sacramento, finding where I want to go to for all sorts of things. I'm enjoying myself a little. What else? Food is amazing. So that's part of the reason why I left Midwest. The whole thing I still miss Midwest. But food is not one of those things. So
yeah, Sacramento's pretty diverse in that. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Really interesting. Okay, let's get into it. Alright, so the first question I like to start off every podcast with is, what do you think is the strongest force in the universe?
Yeah, when I look at that question, I find that interesting. I don't know what to make of it, but I don't want to say anything about it. So I take, well, based on where I'm from, I'm doing philosophy as a living, so I deliberately choose to read the question is about force, about our social human world. This might be by cynicism. I would say, at least this has been my view in the past few years, I think the biggest driving force of a lot of phenomenon that involve society and human is ego, people's ego.
Ego.
For better or worse, it could be a good thing, right? People sometimes get a positive pride in things. But for the most part, it's bad, it's negative. At least that's how I think about ego. Like a lot of things, what people do, how society goes, where at now, like usually it's an ego. Like, that's how I think about things.
Okay, so that's the effects of ego. So what do you think ego is?
That people's self-identity. There are things that people got so attached to that they are willing to sacrifice everything they have for it. And as I said, I try to be neutral, but I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Like having a sense of identity could be a good thing. It's just well, it depends. So, but whether it's good or bad, I take it ego is just there are some things, either it's family, either their religion, either their ethnic identity, either their sexual orientation. It picks something that they would sacrifice almost everything for. I see ego that way.
That's interesting. I feel like now more than ever, or maybe it's always been like this, but now it's more apparent. Like you see like dogmatism, you know, like if anyone tries to kind of like attack that thing you've attached yourself to, is met with instant emotion instead of logic. And I feel like that's kind of like a very big issue nowadays, and I feel like it's being manipulated. I feel like that idea, especially with like social media. Now, like you can have like people come to your aid, like online, people you don't know from all around the world, you know, and it's just like, it's like when is it gonna end? Like when are we gonna actually start being rational in terms of our issues, you know? Right.
So a little qualification. I don't like the dichotomy of logic and emotion, rational and emotional, because the way I think about rationality is think rationally, feel rationally, and desire rationally. So rationality is not in contrast to emotion, the way I see it.
Yeah.
But you're right. My worry overlaps with yours. Is my worry is not quite like people are more emotional than they used to, or they shouldn't be emotional. I think like rationality, part of it is being able to have the right kind of emotion. Like a person who is void of emotion is irrational in their own way. But I do think you're right that manipulation of people's emotion has been like, seems like, at least I don't have data to back myself up, so I'm just making shit up, right? Seems like it's a big thing, especially for social media. The algorithm, what create clicks, what create viewership is, trigger people's immediate reaction to things.
Yeah.
So I do see that. And what the question is, what about that?
Well, it's not really as much of a question. I guess it's just your thoughts on it, which you answered. But I don't know, that just came to my mind when we were talking about that. Because I think it's something that a lot of people are worried about. But at the same time, there's not much we can do about it.
Yeah, I do. Well, I wouldn't say I have a solution. I'm not saying I'm a messiah or anything. I just sometimes wonder. I don't want to pretend I've spent more time thinking about it, but it's just piggybacking on what I was thinking earlier. Is that maybe what is really the issue is not thought, logic, or emotion. It's more like people feel the need to react to things immediately. Because that's what the social media is doing, right?
Yeah.
Get the reaction. People click, like, it's an immediate reaction. But maybe that's the issue. Like, no matter it's thought or emotion, sometimes it's good to slow down, let it sink in first. Is it really what you feel? Like, that's the thing. Like, sometimes we immediately react to things we think we feel a certain way, but we'll give it maybe at least 10 minutes. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let things sink in first. Is it how you really feel that situation? Or is it how you really think about it? The same as logic, right? People think that, oh, I'm logical, I immediately react. Well, take some time first, think it through. So I think it's not about emotion or logic, it's about taking the time. But I guess in modern society, we have to immediately get that opportunity, immediately react to people, immediately feel the thing. So I guess it's just speed that.
Yeah.
Maybe if we can slow things down a little, it would help.
That's interesting. Like in terms of that, I feel like social media is progressing too faster versus slower.
Yeah.
People like the TikTok, the 6-7 seconds scroll, 6 seconds, 2 seconds scroll. Like I feel like now like longer videos they're still popular, but I'd say like the average person who doesn't have like who isn't trying to like look for something in social media, who's just on it, like prefers the fast content. Like oh like that was funny. Oh I'm mad. Like you know quick little rude comment. Like you know people say some mean things and like they say it in like 2 seconds and they're like oh on to the next. And I'm like people don't feel bad anymore like for their own actions. You know.
Right. Yeah. I wonder. I don't want to go philosophical too quickly. I'm just curious. Like maybe the issue is a little bit deeper. It's not just social media. It's more like really because you see that in people. The way people invest as well, right? People like everybody got a phone, they gotta invest money, so they have to chase trend very quickly. Like I suppose maybe another issue is everything becomes a commodity. Like you sell, like every second is money, every second is money, every bit of attention is money. So maybe people feel like they miss out on things if they don't immediately react to thing, immediate pick on some trend. So maybe it's just everything becomes business. It doesn't have to be, like, but when everything becomes business, every second counts, they do fast.
Yeah.
So maybe I think that might be the root cause.
Yeah, that's a really good observation. I definitely really makes sense and applies to like you said, the negative things like social media or how it's used, even good things like hustle culture. You know, like every second you gotta be doing this, you gotta be grinding, all that, like all that applies to good and bad.
Yeah, if you open your planner, if it's not filled, what do you if it's not packed, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't have to be that way. Take your time.
Yeah. Interesting. So on that note, I want to learn more about. I don't know if you're spiritual, religious, or whatever, but you share like you know your thoughts on like what you believe in, and you know just general.
Yeah. About religion, I'm an atheist. I'm not even an agnostic. I know sometimes people like I would like try to be polite. Say, I'm just agnostic. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm not. I'm not. I'm just simply atheist. Simple as that. But I do come across the term spirituality a lot, and it seems to be that people are deliberately trying to separate it from religiosity. But I guess I never quite understand what people have in mind when they talk about spirituality. Yeah, well, what do you think it means like when you write that question? I'm curious.
I'd say
to reverse the question back.
Yeah, no, of course. I love it. I'll take it. I guess religion. When I think the term religion versus spirituality, I think more structure, more. You know, religion includes a set of rituals, a set of ideas, a set of actions, and spirituality is more a set of belief for me. I know religion can be that too.
Yeah,
but
it is a set of belief.
Yeah, and like they probably are the same thing, but I think the way that they played out into society is what makes it different. I think religion's played out a certain way where it started off with the intention of, you know, helping people, you know, strengthen their beliefs with life, with themselves, with, you know, another entity to like give that better perspective besides them being the center of their own life. But, you know, I feel like it's been manipulated a lot over the years, you know, as people with good intentions start dying and, you know, more people start joining and climbing up, not everyone's going to have the same intentions, and I think it's led to like a very like, oh, if you don't like believe us, then like you're gonna be in hell, you're gonna, you know, all rot and all that. So with spirituality, I feel like it's kind of the religion that hasn't become more mainstream or more structural, because I feel like spirituality, it like includes so many ideas from other religions, as cultures, and it's just a mixture of them. So no one has like no one has a hold on spirituality, you know. Versus religion, each group has a hold on their own structure. So that's kind of the difference for me.
Right. So it seems like the thought is religion is more like an institutionalized set of
that's right.
relatively fixed set of beliefs, but spirituality mostly describe a kind of tendency to explore, like how to live life in general, more open-ended. That's why it's more exploratory. So that's well, if that's what you mean by spirituality, then into it. In a way, like 80% of philosophy is about that. I would say like people would disagree with me. I'm pretty sure in my profession, but ultimately, I do think that that's something I care a lot about. I would even say like more and more. I used to be more interested in like super technical issues in philosophy, but
what's that?
I used to care more about like technical, logical puzzle kind of issue in
Like the
philosophy.
logic part.
Yeah, solving puzzles, putting theories together, like solving paradoxes. Like I used to be more into that kind of stuff when I was younger, but I am like leaning more and more towards the spiritual aspect of philosophy these days. So yeah, definitely I'm into that. Yeah, am I answering your question? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just, you don't have to answer it. You can ask another question on top of my question. Just whatever, comes to your head.
Yeah, even my research projects now these days lean more towards that side. Like I used to work on stuff like, philosophy of time, the nature of time. Like, so it's a puzzle, it's like trying to solve puzzle-y kind of.
It's like mathematical kind of.
Well, I wouldn't say mathematical. I'm bad at math. That's another thing. I'm terrible at math. I wish I'm better, but I'm not. But it's more like solving paradox, building theory about the world kind of topic. But now I'm more like working on like say two major topics I'm working on. One is about the commodification issue that I just mentioned.
Interesting.
I'm working with some sociologist friends who is interested in like the loneliness problem in contemporary society. Like, the rate of suicide by despair is like way high, these days. So part of the issue might be how people no longer feel the capacity to build meaningful relationship with other people in the society broadly or community. And one worry is part is because everything becomes business. Every human relationship becomes contract negotiation, but that is no longer, it doesn't feel meaningful anymore. So one of the hypotheses we're working on is maybe that drives the feeling that people don't feel that their life is meaningful anymore. So driving to despair, and that's why. In our project working on Chinese philosophy, it's about what you should pay attention to when you interact with people. So when you look at another person, should I focus just on their virtues, their good stuff? Forget about their negative stuff. Forget about like the fact that they're always late. Forget about that part. Don't look at it. Focus on the good stuff. Is it a good way to interact with people, or actually we should like pay attention to people more holistically? So the reason I talk about this is to show like, these days I'm thinking more about issues on a spiritual end of stuff. Yeah.
Do you think that's just kind of like what you found at this point in your life, or do you think it's representing like your own growth in life?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. Because I wonder myself a little bit too. Because look, one way I want to think, I guess there are two hypotheses I have about myself about this development. One is, maybe it's just that I'm doing philosophy longer, so I'm better at it, so I find what's really important. So it's an improvement, it's a progress that I find something more important. Another hypothesis that I have is just I'm just fucking older. So it's just older people are like more interested in like ethical issues. So it's, I don't know, like it's hard to tell, like is it because I'm older or is it because I'm better? I don't know. And sometimes I feel that about philosophy as well. Like in philosophy, one part is also in religion, like it's ethics, right? Usually it's like dominated by people who are older. Like the elders, like in religion, the elders gonna tell you the truth and how to live life. Like in ethics, the older folks like, I've experienced, shut up kid. I'm gonna tell you how to live life. Sometimes I wonder whether this is actually, like why? Like why can't it be that different stages of life would have different set of norms that's appropriate to them, like young folks would have certain kind of value that's appropriate to younger folks. As you grow older, some other kind of norm would be appropriate. Like, why would you think that, like, as a person grow older, they'll be wiser? You just switch to a different kind of life. That's it. Like, there's no reason they should have more authority over everybody else.
True.
So maybe that's it too. Like, that's why I shift to more spiritual issues. Not that I'm better, it's just that I switch to a different gear.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I think with age, like people say wisdom. What's like young people? Like for me, I love acquiring knowledge, right? Like, but I feel like I've acquired knowledge and then I can't do much with it. And then say like I'm using this as a personal example, like 2 years later, then like an event happens in my life or I go through a change in my life and I reflect back, and I remember some of those ideas that I learned way back then, and I'm able to connect them into my experiences, and that's what really creates wisdom. So that's why it's like, I don't know, like people always ask me like, oh, like what kind of books do you read, blah blah blah, and like I used to read a lot of books, but I felt like I couldn't do anything with them, you know, like yeah, you can like act on them, but then again it goes back to now you're using your knowledge to act into your experience, which is honestly probably the like best, like that's pretty cool. Like instead of having to age and then look back and then learn, oh no, the logo. You can learn it beforehand, and then as you move into the situations in your life, you gotta keep it in your head, you know? It's hard, like it's hard to apply your knowledge when you're going through things in the moment, you know, because
Right. Yeah. So, well, you mentioned a few things. They are all interesting. So here's how I think about it. I never think that I should tell people like how you should think about it. I'm just thinking how I think about it. Maybe you find it relate to what you were talking about. I don't think it's particularly useful to think about what knowledge is useful. Like I think it's more important to be resourceful. Instead of like before you learn, it's put it that way. Let me retract. I don't think it's particularly meaningful to before you learn something think about, oh, is it useful to learn this or this thing? Like you don't know. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Like things happen. Sometimes you think you learn something useless, but after a few years, suddenly, oh, you run into a situation that, oh, I'm glad I learned something. So I think that it's more useful to just explore things and have fun with things and try to be resourceful.
When you say resourceful,
Yeah,
you mean creativity?
Yeah, being creative in using things that you have instead of worrying whether things will be useful. Like, whatever things that you have, you will be able to find a way to use it if you're creative enough. So there's no such thing as objectively what's useful, what's useless.
Yeah.
Thinking it that way, I think it's self-limiting. Like you're already telling yourself, oh, there's no way I can use this. Well, I don't know, it's a matter of creativity. If you situate yourself right, like anything could be useful, right?
True.
So I think it's more liberating to think about it that way, at least for me.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. You gotta use what you already have. I think it comes to
just have fun with things. Don't need to worry about things. It's not going to be useful. It will be useful if you want to use it.
Yeah. I guess it's like be open to opportunities.
Yeah. Just go with it, and it will be useful. Like if you want to.
Yeah. Because then why else would you do it? If you know.
Yeah.
You don't see the use to it.
You will find an opportunity to use things that you have.
100%. Okay. I think we fundamentally agree on some type of stuff. Cool. So you said you studied Chinese philosophy. Is that like just broadly, or do you specify in specific schools of thought?
I did. Well, actually, my path into, I don't know how much people are interested in it. My path into Chinese philosophy is actually pretty weird because, well, I'm Chinese. Well, without going into too much politics about that term, like I'm Chinese, a complicated issue. So I first got interested in philosophy partly, not wholly. It's because of Chinese philosophy, but I lost interest in it, and when I moved to the Western world, I mean Europe or in the US, I kind of deliberately distanced myself from it because what I said, circle back to what I said, ego. Like I feel like, okay, I can do Chinese philosophy and I'll have massive advantage because I speak the language, I know the cultural connections, I know a lot of stuff that like if like a Westerner try to do Chinese philosophy beginning the same time as I do, I would have massive advantage. So professionally, career-wise, but my ego prevented me from doing that. Like my thought was like, I was young. If I have to play a game, I want to win it in your turf. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I know if I play my game, of course I'll win. I'm 10 steps ahead of all of you. Like, I don't want to win that way. I want it's an ego thing. I want to win in your turf. So I kind of deliberately stay away from doing Chinese philosophy since I've been here. So it's only recently, maybe I'm like, oh, they're more mature, wise, however you want to call it. And they're like, who cares? And partly maybe it's because pandemic. Like pandemic really changed ways I think about things. Like, who cares? I enjoy this, I do this. Like, it's not a winning, I do this for myself. So I come back to it. And to your other question, I wouldn't say I do Chinese philosophy comprehensively. I guess nobody claimed that. I'm mostly interested in the ancient period, like the medieval period, modern period. I'm not as interested in it yet. Yeah, but mostly it's ancient period, particularly about the social political philosophy.
Okay. So what do you mean social political?
Yeah, so this is how I like to think about ancient Chinese philosophy. Again, people would disagree with me. There are people interested in Chinese philosophy in the sense of their wisdom about like self-cultivation, ethics, but I'm more interested in the way the discussion about social political connection. Like, for example, I'm working intensely on a philosopher, ancient Chinese philosopher called 𝐉𝐨𝐲𝐬𝐧 𝐃𝐢𝐦. His major contribution, again, this is a matter of debate. I think his major contribution is to focus on the importance of emotional connection among people in society.
So with each other? Okay.
Yes, for there to be a fruitful and useful, healthy society or country, community, is less about making sure that there is like some kind of social contract that everybody deliberate and debate about and agreed on. It's not quite about that. It's about finding a way to develop empathy among the group. If there's no empathy within the group, no social contract, no negotiation could work. It's like a sport team, right? A team can work together only if there's an empathy among them. If there's empathy within the group, they can go through thick and thin. Like the worst situation, they'll stick with each other. But if it's based on some kind of contract, some kind of business deal or some kind of decision like that, the moment things doesn't work for people turn on each other. So I think that's what the person I'm working on, like 𝐉𝐨𝐲𝐬𝐧, is focusing on like, what kind of emotional connection is needed to have a healthy social connection, how to build it, how is it possible, those kind of issues. That's what I meant by social political.
That's really cool. I think you definitely spot what you're like when you were saying emotional connection. I was thinking about like, I always, like when I'm out and about, it's at a grocery store, and I hear like people conversing, say to the worker and the person, like all I hear is politeness, and I'll rarely hear like genuine kindness, you know?
Right.
I hear like, hey, how you doing? And then they're like, good, how are you? And then like, most time the person doesn't even reply. You know, it's kind of like, oh, when I come up to someone, I say this, they say this back because they're working, they have to be, you know, more polite.
Right.
Other person, good, or like doesn't even reply. And it's just like, I'm like you don't really care. Like, why are you asking if you don't care, you know?
But I guess it's a ritual, right? Like, I guess it's worse if the person deliberately don't even try. Yeah, but this is something that you have to tell me more about. Like, this is something that I'm still trying to understand in California is sometimes like in these social events, people do those like back and forth niceties. I just don't know whether the person is nice or is it just because they are like in a workplace is trying to go through the formality. Like I heard that mostly you should just treat it as like they're not sincere. That's what I'm told. So that's why sometimes I don't take those too seriously because I'm told that you're not supposed to take it serious. They just do this for the sake of it. So I don't know whether that's true.
Yeah, like I just don't like it. Like I want to see genuineness. Like that's kind of like I hate like politeness. Like I don't know. Like if you're not gonna be polite, then like don't say nothing. That's my opinion, you know. Because like I don't know. Like there should be like the power in your words is you know your belief in them and the truth that you're saying instead of like you know saying like just a set of things just to be perceived a certain way. You know. So it's more kind of like why do you care how you're going to be perceived if you don't say X, if you don't really, you know, care about it in the first place? Right.
But do you think that, well, that's part of my question. I just don't know whether people are sincere. It seems that your impression is that they are not.
You can kind of tell though. Okay. Like when I like say a worker like says something to me, like I look people in the eyes when I first like meet them or see them, and then like I can tell by their expression. And I'll see just the emotion behind it, and like you know like they're like great like how's your day going versus good how are you, or like You know, like when they say it, it's like they kind of say it with a blank face. You know.
Interesting, because my experience is almost like the opposite. That's why it's confusing me so much so far in California. People who interact in workplace, I'm like serve or whatever, they seem extremely positive and engaged. Like in Midwest, I lived for 4 years in Midwest. People are like a little bit more distant. Here, my feeling is everybody is like almost like, oh brother, like almost they didn't say the word, but like give me the impression that they're almost going like engaged like that. But and then like I'm not sure like is it for real or not. Like you seem super into this engagement, for sure. So I don't know how to react. I don't want to like it is just formalities. I don't want to over engage. So yeah, I'm very confused about this. So maybe it's just me. I'm terrible in reading. So
you're not wrong though. Like I feel like it's either like the 0 or 100. You know, people. I guess also depends on what job you're in. Like for say my example, I was thinking about was at grocery store. You know, and then your examples are more like teaching, like more like social jobs. So like yeah, so it kind of makes sense because it's more of a social job, they aim towards like the higher half versus the lower half of engagement, you know? In terms of energy.
Yeah, I didn't mean like my social interaction for my job.
I
mean like in everyday
in
life.
general.
Yeah, in
general.
Okay. So yeah, I'm just very confused, but
yeah.
That's weird, like because I do work on social connections and stuff, but I'm very bad at reading social cues. So that's a weird. Yeah.
How do you think in China like the atmosphere is?
Do you mind elaborating what exactly are you
like
asking?
you know how I guess social contracts versus genuine relationships?
Well, I can only speak for Hong Kong for 10 years ago. Because Hong Kong things plays out slightly differently from mainland China. It's a very traditional society. So it definitely does not seem like.
I'm listening, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure.
Yep. Okay. I'll check on it.
So it's the other side of the extreme. My feeling of growing up in Hong Kong is that it's an extremely traditional society where everybody has a role to play in like a big scene of community, families and stuff. So it doesn't feel like relationships are like contract. So we don't have that. But at the same time, it's suffocating in another way. Like when you're like feeling constantly being expected to check a lot of boxes because of who you are and the family. Like, come on, man! I just want to.
You're the
I just want to do my own thing. Can you just tell me what you want? I'll give you that. And I'll just fuck off. So there's always a balance.
True.
So Hong Kong traditional transfer social relationships like suffocating in its own way.
Yeah, 100%. It's kind of like family. Like you said, like I think for Indian cultures it's kind of the same thing. Kind of relates to how most of the country is poor, so you don't have like you're saying that individual freedom, because you know your family needs to eat, and you as a man need to help that, help your father, help your siblings also achieve that. So it does come down to necessity, I guess. That's why like in America, very untraditional and like. You're kind of able to, 18 years old, parents kick their kids out. Very different than like in traditional cultures. Even if like traditional cultures come here, I still think it's kind of like it's met with a lot more dissonance. Just because that's when the parents were like they were raised in that way of thinking. So you can't just change your way of thinking just because you move places when you're older, But I always think it's interesting when I see older Indians like kind of like Americanized, because I don't know, because like they come here obviously for better opportunity, right? But most of them still want to keep that sense of identity they have. I think it's a common issue. A lot of cultures lose their sense of identity. But yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting. Are your parents still in Hong Kong?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I'm the only white person here. Yeah. My sense is the same for immigrants from China and Hong Kong, so they want to keep some kind of sense of cultural identity. For some reason, I never had that. Like people keep asking me, like my mom will sometimes say, "Oh, do you miss food? Like you could cook it." Like I really don't care. I honestly don't care. Yeah. So yeah, is maybe that's why I feel particularly suffocated in traditional society because I don't share that need to belong.
Yeah. Fair. So you were saying earlier that you just came back to Chinese philosophy recently. Like, as you were, going through the professional and educational world, like, what was kind of your main topics of interest?
From where? From the very beginning?
No, like you said, you recently came back to Chinese philosophy, and then I say from leaving Germany to COVID, like what kind of things did you study?
Yeah, I've tried different things. So I'm not the kind of person. There are two kinds of academic. There are a kind of academic who's like a big project throughout, consistent, productive. I am like a nomad. I try things. It isn't where I try something else. So when I was in Germany, I focused on studying German philosophy. Specifically focused on a philosopher called Kant. Kant.
Okay.
For a long time, I'm like a strong follower of his ethics, at least, if not his philosophy of science part. I still think that there are some interesting things there. But I've since grown out of it. So when I moved to the US, partly it's because I'm the hierarchical stuff in Germany, but also because I'm kind of feeling done with Kant's philosophy.
Do you think he kind of dominates German philosophy?
I don't think so, but he has a massive influence, not just in Germany. Like Kant actually is I would say he's a top 3 influential, at least top 3 influential Western philosopher. Like his influence is on everything, like not just in German, but in French philosophy.
What are his like main ideas?
It's hard to quickly summarize, but if I have to pick 2 things, one thing is in ethics is his view that autonomy is in the center of ethics. Autonomy. Instead of happiness, like ethics is not about making everyone happy. Yeah, it's about making sure everybody has a fair chance of exercising their autonomy. So it's even if it leads to like unhappiness. So that's a big hallmark of his way of thinking about ethics. For a long time, I believe that too. I've since grown out of it. And other big hallmarks, less about ethics. It's harder to summarize. But his view that our way of seeing the world is shaped by how we think about things.
Interesting.
Yeah. So before he it's I wouldn't say it's common, but it's also a popular way to think about things. Like our experience is like data. We got data, and then data is unchangeable data. We work on them to create theory. But part of his innovation is that he thinks that you shouldn't think about experience that way, as if there's a passive part that's fact, fixed data, and there's like theory we build out of it. Actually, how we experience the world is kind of a mixture of how we receive things and also how we shape our experience by how we think. So that's why to properly understand experience, you need to understand both sides of things. So yeah, that's out of the many things that I think he's influential about. There's no such thing as raw experience. No, all experiences are shaded and shaped by the way we theorize about things in one way or another. So yeah, those are 2 main things. Yeah, that's Kant, and then I left. I moved to the US. I work on metaphysics, a branch in philosophy called metaphysics. Mostly hard to define, but mostly it's about understanding the basic structure or conceptual side of things about the structure of reality. That's why I said earlier there's a phase in my career that I work a lot on philosophy of time issue, metaphysics of time issue. That's why.
Metaphysics of time.
Yeah, where the tenses are real, that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. One thing, so I saw a movie Interstellar recently, and when they were on a planet, time was different. One day on that planet is 100 days on Earth, for example. And made me really think about what time is. Something we experience, but that experience can be different based on, I guess, the atmosphere we're on. Is it gravity? Is gravity the thing that changes your perception of time? Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it seems that there are 2 questions, right? One question is about the nature of time itself. Of course, it's because of relativity, gravity is going to change the fabric of time, space-time specifically. So yeah, gravity is really, there's nothing I can say about it. That's just physics theory. Physicists work on it, and I take their word for it. The other question you ask is actually, you mentioned is about the experience of time. That's a different topic, right? Time is one thing, experience of time is another. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Experience of time. I guess there are a lot of debate about like to what extent we should take our experience of time seriously. For example, why do people think that tenses like past, present, future, these tenses, why do you think there are such things? Well, it's because people experience the present and remember the past. So people think that these tenses are real because of their experience of time. But of course there's a question about like, well, just like any scientific domain, like our first person experience is maybe a place to start, but they have no authority over issues. So if our best scientific theory don't talk about tenses at all, there's no objective difference between which moment's present, which moment's past, which moments are future, then maybe we should disregard and say that tenses are not real, even though that's the way we experience time.
Yeah.
So I think it's useful to separate two things, like how we experience something and how things really are in themselves. Yeah, that's
interesting.
the best idea.
Yeah. That time is super cool. Just like they said, there's no like past, future, present. It's kind of all just happening, right?
Yeah, it's just a timeline. Well, that's one view. This one view say that time is just a timeline, different moments. There's a direction in it, but there's no specific moment that is, oh, this is the objectively present. It just so happened that we are in this moment. That's it. Yeah, that's what I meant by that. And what was I going to say? I forgot. I was going to say something, but I forgot. But anyways, if you come back, it comes back.
Yeah, I'd be like that. So sometimes the writing, and then you have to pay attention.
I thought I would keep track of things, but I forgot about it.
Yeah. It's interesting how there's like directions and stuff. Like when you said there's a direction in time, there's also a direction that like space is moving in. Like, do you think they're kind of the same thing? Like the expansion of space. Do you think as space expands, that's when time comes with it? Or do you think the time is kind of like there already before space?
Yeah, I guess the way you ask the question assume a distinction of time and space as two different aspects of reality. But I suppose after Einstein, we like to think about it, space-time is a single thing, right?
Oh, okay.
I take it. So if we think about time that way, as in like space-time is like one manifold and time is just one aspect of it, then maybe the question should not be asked in the first place, right? It's almost like asking like there's three-dimensional space and like, oh, do you think it's which dimension comes first? Well, no, that the whole thing is a package kind of thing. So,
but there's more parts of the package, and like we're saying it's one thing just from the point of view we're in the package, but what if you go higher up in the package and realize it's kind of separate?
Now there is a debate about in philosophy, like whether scientists take that seriously. That's another question, or whether we should care about whether science take care about this issue, not an issue. So there is a debate about whether, so in scientific theory, people talk about space-time, time is just one more dimension, so nothing special about it, but there are definitely philosophical conversations about like whether there is the proper way to think about things. Maybe there's some ways in which time is special. So one way is that like, when it comes to space, objectively no area in space is special. Right? Like I say here, when I refer to where I'm standing, I say here. It's not that here is any special, any place objectively special, it just so happen to be where I'm standing. There, here, like these are just human relatives, right? Not objective feature of space. Some people argue that when it comes to time, it's different. These people are people who think that tenses are real. This moment is present, is an objective fact that this is a special moment, is present. So
being the present moment.
So that's why time is slightly different from space. Space, all part of space are equal. No part are special and more real than others. When it comes to time, it's different. there's a special thing called precedence. Which moment is precedent? That's objective fact. So for those who think that tenses are real, they will think that way, that time is different from space. But other people would think that no, there's nothing special about time. It's just another dimension of this thing we call space-time.
Interesting. I don't know, like, from what I'm saying, do you think I'm saying it's one thing or it's separate?
I'm sorry?
From what you're hearing from me, like, do you think I'm saying that space-time is one thing or separate?
Yeah, the way I hear your question, that's why I said earlier, is that it seems that the way you ask a question suggests that you assume that they're different things. Right.
Interesting. I think, like, time is a result, but I don't want to say it's a result of space because, I don't know, I think, but to have space, like, there needs to be, like, I feel like time without space was kind of like the Big Bang. It was all space kind of in one thing. There's no time, there's no direction it's going in. It's all in one thing. When it explodes out, it let out time, which is how, like, you know, say everything, it was just a bunch of space dust, like, you know, the remnants of the Big Bang, all the particles. And time is what led them to, you know, form like planets, like suns and stuff. And then, you know, it led things to crash, it led planets to develop. I think it's all a result of time. And I guess, like, this is space is expanding. So I just think about like what is the space that hasn't been expanded into yet? Like, is that just like nothingness? Or is it like, you know?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so, well, first of all, I just want to make sure, to clarify, most of this issue is beyond my expertise. So
Me too.
I'm the kind of thing that I'm kind of philosopher to think that there are issues that don't belong to the expertise of a philosopher, so I'll defer to people who have expertise to speak on that. But I think there is a question that you asked in the end that I think is interesting. I don't have an answer to it. Interesting. The question is like the question of nothingness. Basically, what you're asking is like, we talk like, oh, when the universe expands, is it expanding into what? Into what's originally nothing? If there's nothing to expand into, what is expansion? That's what you're asking, right?
Yeah, and I feel like what is expanding is just time.
I didn't thought that was what you were asking. Because what is expanding is the entire space-time, right? It's not just just the time expanding or just the space expanding.
But isn't the space all kind of already there? But it's like, that's what I'm saying, like the part doesn't have time in it. Like, is that kind of what we're like talking about? Like, I'm kind of confused. I've always been confused, like space-time is expanding outward. Like, I'm like, what does that mean?
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, I see. Because the idea is that when we use the word expand in English, we're talking about something expanding in space. So there must be an empty container that it expand into.
Yeah.
So this is, I think, is just an unfortunate limit of metaphor. We sometimes use metaphorical language to communicate some theory. We say, oh, the universe expand.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, when we use English to communicate, in everyday life, when you expand, we kind of assume expanding into something.
Yeah.
So there's something in the background we're expanding into, right? So I take it in this case, it's just that our language reaches our limit, and metaphor is useful, but at some point it starts to carry too much baggage that we don't want to carry. I take it that that's just one of those places. The fact that universe expand doesn't imply that there's a space beyond the universe that's expanding into. So that's how I think about it.
Yeah, really interesting. I hope we'll, eventually find an answer to it.
Yeah, as I said, it's beyond my expertise. I'm sure your listener would, who knows more, would be able
comment
to,
if you know.
Yeah, would comment.
Yep. So you were saying Kant. I just remember this. You were saying earlier about Kant, how he's saying that your perception shapes your reality, pretty much, right?
The way we think about it, well, the way he thinks about it is it's not as if like you can think however you think and then you shape experience. It's like he thinks that the way we think about things have structure. There's a cognitive architecture in people's mind. We are hardwired to think about things in a certain way. In that hardwired structure of how we think about things shape how we experience things. So it's not arbitrary. He's not saying that, I just decided to think that there's like a cup of beer in front of me, a glass of beer, Like cup, who put yes. Yeah, so it's not like, oh, I can think something and then suddenly I'll see it. Not as radical as that, but yeah.
But is it more that, well, I guess like where I was going with it was kind of, I was gonna ask like kind of in terms like when you were first talking about it, it made me think about things like the law of attraction and manifesting and goals. Kind of, you know, like kind of how if you believe that you have something already, then your mind will structure itself into finding a path to get it.
Yeah, well, I heard people I'm just getting old. I heard people use the word like manifesting a lot. I never know what that means.
It's all the same thing. Like I say, like it's all like dependent on what structure you're talking from. Like say law of attraction, kind of this new age type spirituality, manifesting, pretty spiritual. And like one thing that also used like with those is also goals. And I think that's just a scientific way of saying that. You know, you have a goal, then you figure out how to achieve your goal. You manifest. It's just kind of different ways to think about it. Manifesting is like, I already have this. And then the hope is that by you thinking you already have it, you'll create opportunities to get you closer
kind
to
of
it.
Self-fulfilling prophecy or something like that. Like it was self-talk, right?
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, actually, that's something that I'm very interested in. Like one of my papers is actually about self-knowledge on that, like the rationality of this kind of self-talk. Yeah. What were you asking about?
I just want. No, okay. I was relating it to kind of what you said about Kant, because it seemed like.
Oh, right. Remember. Yeah. So here's how Kant think about it. Well, Kant is a person who's very difficult to read, so there are so many interpretations. This is just me, and also I've stopped studying Kant for a while. So this is just my memory. But part of it is that when he says things like, "Oh, the structure of how we think about things shape our experience," for him, that involves morality. So for him, we would have to experience the world as if it's designed, created by some good God-like designer. He's not saying that there is a God. Well, he's saying that we have to experience the world as if it's designed by some
Why is
God.
that?
He's just thinking that this is how our cognitive architecture is designed. Like how we think about things, we have to think about things systematically. Okay. That's part of our design. Like when we think, how does thought work, logic work? It has to be systematic. We don't randomly jump from one thought to another. It's always systematic. And systematic means what? Means that ultimately we're like boils down to some fundamental principle. That's how we organize thoughts. And that's why, if that's how we organize thought, we have to be systematic, based on some universal principle, ultimate principle, shape how we see things, experience things. So we have to see things as if, oh, it's all like built towards the same thing, like it's designed in a certain way. So that's why you think that we would have to experience the world as if it's theological, religious in some way, moral in some way. There must be a point in everything. People say things, right?
Yeah.
Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Even if it's like super shitty, it's like, oh, there must be a point in it in the end. He thinks that that's it's not just people wishful thinking. We are like hardwired to experience the world that way. So yeah, that's part of his view.
Interesting. I actually have a quote. I saved it on my notes a while ago, because I thought it was like cool. But when you said principles, it's basically talking about principles. So I was like, oh shoot, I'm just gonna read it. Okay, so the quote is by Ralph Waldo Emerson. It goes, "As to methods, there may be a million and then some, but principles are few. The man who grasps principles can successfully select his own methods. The man who tries methods, ignoring principles, is sure to have trouble." It doesn't really relate to what you're talking about, but I really wasn't sure if I was going to read it. But then, like, when you said principles, like, it kind of relates as in that, like, principles are fundamental, right? Like, that's what they mean. And then Kant was talking about it, that life has fundamental principles that we kind of subconsciously create structures around.
Yeah, I thought it's structured in a certain rigid way. He thinks, right?
Yeah.
It kind of colored and molded the way we experience the world around us.
What would be like the opposite way of thinking about that?
Yeah, so I myself have kind of moved past, at least from an ethical perspective, moved past on this very principle-based way of thinking. Like I've never read like Emerson, so I'm just taking it as you presented me the quote.
Mm-hmm.
I take it that is it how you read it? I read it as like it's a contrast between like people who just try things and see how it goes. That's a method part versus principle. Like sometimes people would have like, oh, this is my rule, the way I do things. Even if it doesn't work, I'll stick with it. Like that's a person with principle. Versus person with method is like being opportunistic. We'll see whatever I'm thrown into. I'll try different method for different situation. So more flexible kind of like. I take it that's a contrast being spoken in the quote. I don't know. Is it how you read it? I don't know. I'm just making it up right now.
When I said it earlier, I just like was relating it to what you're saying. But how I first read this, it was in terms of knowledge. As a kind of how like there's people who memorize things and learn things, and there's people who find out why things are true. And I don't know. That's when I first read it. It made me think about technology and this age of information, and how you can learn anything, from, you're a cyborg. You have this, thing in your pocket that can give you all these answers. And even in schools though, like, I feel like there's less like fundamentals being emphasized. I feel like it's kind of like, you learn fundamentals for a little bit, and then there's just all these things from fundamentals, like from like the years of society that we've like learned from fundamentals. But now those things are kind of in the like focus versus the fundamentals. But I don't know, that's why I think like people who innovate have a good grasp on the fundamentals and that. But I feel like it's not as like common nowadays for people to have more fundamental knowledge versus just informational knowledge.
So correct me if this is what you're getting at. Is it that instead of like having understanding of some basic principle of how things work behind the scene, people just have some very contextual technical knowledge.
Yeah,
they can do
it's
this,
useful.
Like I think they know how to do this or that thing. That's it, but they don't know the reasoning behind things to apply it more broadly beyond the context that they're thrown into. Yeah, more piecemeal. People become a little piece of a machine. They just know how to do that piece. They don't know the big picture. Is it true? I don't know. Sometimes I'm worried about this generalization that is not giving people enough credit. But also this is something that I've changed over the past few years. Is I am less obsessed with principles. I think
It's because you know them though? It's because like you think you know them, so now you can expand?
It's the opposite. I've come to believe that people don't know as much about what kind of principle is good for you as they think they are. Maybe it's an ego thing. Let's go back to it. Like with all ego, people think that, oh, I know this is a matter of principle. They think this is the right thing. I stick to it no matter what. Maybe, but why? You just randomly pick this as your principle out of nowhere. I don't know. So a lot of people stick to principle because they think they know more than they think.
I think we're using principle differently.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm using principle as more fundamental.
Yeah, like how things happen, like behind the scene, the ultimate explanation of things. Like that's what I'm having.
Okay, cool.
That's my thought is that like it makes sense if you think you know the basic reason of how things happen. Sure, stick to your understanding. But my thought is that actually people don't know as much about that as they pretend to be. They like to convince themselves that I have the clear view of the fundamental principle of everything. Everybody's don't. Like so, but I don't think we know as much as we do. So I'm more of a skeptic. That's why the method part is where I go. Because like, let's not pretend we know more than we do. Let's just go with the context we have.
That's fair. I kind of like, the way I think about it is that to create more methods, you need good understanding of the principles. It's kind of what I mean. Like, I feel like there's method and there's principle. I feel like the principles are overlooked in favor of the method. But what you're saying is kind of people who are in the fundamentals but then kind of stay in them because they think it's the answer. But at least how I think about it is that get in the fundamentals and then learn how to create new methods. I feel like that's kind of like, that's just innovation. It's like creativity plus...
Really? That's interesting because I didn't mean to do that because there's a third part of Kant's work. So we do science stuff, how we experience the world, and do morality. But there's like a later work where he talks about aesthetics, about creativity. So he has this famous way to talk about it, is that creativity is, what is the nature of the creativity? Like part of creativity is to do things without principle. If there's a given principle to you and just follow the principle, follow the recipe, that's not creativity. There's nothing bad about it, but it's not creativity. Creativity is when you're doing things, but there's no guiding principle behind it. You're just making it up as it goes. So
you have to know them. I feel like you need to have the knowledge to be able to play with. Is what I mean. Like you can't just like I can't go into physics and like start thinking a bunch about theoretical physics, even though that's what I do because it's fun. But I'm saying like I would need to study physics, learn all the information we have, and then think about new things. That's kind of what I mean. Like, yeah.
You have knowledge that you can play with.
Yeah.
If you don't know basic knowledge about the materials, you can't paint, right?
Yeah.
So you need some knowledge so that you can play with it. But how you play with it, there's no recipe.
Yeah.
At least if it's about creativity, there can't be a recipe. There's no recipe of creativity. At least according to Kant. I think probably somebody would disagree with that.
There's not a lot of like, well, at least like maybe you see it differently, but I feel like there's not a lot of space for people to be creative nowadays. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I guess it goes back to what I said in the very beginning. Is I don't think that's true. I guess part of the thing about creativity is a person who is truly creative is a person you don't need to give that person space to be creative. That person, no matter what space you give that.
But they have to live, they have to make money.
That's true. Okay, that's what you mean. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, the economic pressure. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's maybe like that's where we agree. I said earlier at one point that modern society, one of the issues, I don't think it's social media itself, but more like the tendency to make everything a business. And once you make everything a business, it's not people's fault to make everything a business because people need to live, need to eat. They have to make everything a business.
Capitalism.
Yeah, kind of make everything. It's almost like people need to make everything a business to survive.
Yeah.
But once you make everything a business, then you're right. Then it gets take the air out of creativity. Like creativity only happens when you have leisure. You don't need to worry about things, then creativity kicks in. When everything's about business, it's about need, then you just don't have the oxygen for creativity. And yeah, unfortunately, that's why life becomes less meaningful. And that's why I say, like, I was working with a friend in sociology about this. Is maybe that's the sense of that create people's general sense of life becoming less meaningful because there's no room for them to make it meaningful.
Make it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I agree with you on that. Yeah. It's unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. That's something like why I've always kind of disliked the education system. I don't know, I've always liked learning about interesting stuff, but I feel like I could never really get the chance to in education.
Yeah, they set things up in a way you don't have the room for to do that.
Yeah. Is that like, from your perspective, because you were kind of on the other side of education, is that kind of true for like for working in education too? Do you think it's very rigid?
It is. Rigid in the sense that I guess since you bring up the fact that I'm on the other side, I've been on both sides. I was a student not too long ago. So, yeah, I'm surprised how everything is so driven by business consideration on our side. Like, I used to imagine that, being a professor, it's a life of mine and explore things that are interesting.
Only when you're tenured.
And share my, even after tenure, to be honest with you. It's all about exploration and sharing your interest with students, finding mutual interest with people. I thought it's about that, but it turns out I'm surprised how much everything is. Yeah, driven by business consideration. Like even what you can be interested in. Like, there are things that you just don't have room to be interested in, like things that would not increase enrollment, for example. It's not the kind of thing you can afford to be interested in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not the kind of person who like super cynical about that. I just find it interesting to discover how things happen behind the scene.
Yeah. Okay. So just for the viewers, he's my professor right now in Asian. What's the name of the class?
I don't remember what course it is. Philosophy of India.
Philosophy of India. Yeah, Philosophy of India. Was that like a hard class to like? Has that class been going, or is it something that you wanted to start and like you had to go through hurdles to do it?
Yeah. So there is already like Chinese philosophy and philosophy of India courses established in the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that for a while there's nobody's teaching it. The person who last taught it passed away. That's what I heard. I never met that person. So it's been empty, vacant for a while, and they do want to increase the diversity of our curriculum, which is a good thing. So partly is that, and mostly I work in Chinese philosophy, so that's an easy part for me. And I mentioned that in class the first week. I don't even know.
Even before, remember we talked, but no one showed up for the strike day.
Yeah. So my interest mostly is in Chinese philosophy, and that get me interested in Chinese Buddhism, and that's get me into a side interest in Indian philosophy. So mostly it's that. So that's why I pick up on both. They need here. They need people to teach both. Mostly for me, it's Chinese philosophy, but okay, they need Indian philosophy as well. Okay,
Gotta represent.
I'll represent. I'll fill in the hole. If you need somebody to fill it, I guess I can. That kind of situation.
So I want to talk about Buddhism. So you say Buddhism is something you've studied a lot?
I wouldn't say that, but I know something.
I guess no one can.
It's
a lot's relative.
Given so many branches, there are so many interpretations.
One branch that I was like really interested in for a little bit was Tibetan Buddhism.
Yeah, we had that conversation. Remember, that's unfortunately is the branch that I'm not very familiar with.
Okay. What do you think like the main difference between the sects are? It just depends, or is it like one idea?
I think there are major differences on the theoretical level. It's about, well, to put it in a very simplified way, one big thesis in Buddhism was everything is empty, the emptiness thesis. But what does that mean? Like that's where the different branches interpret in different ways. Some people say that empty means the microscopic objects, tables, chairs, people, they don't really exist. What really exists is some more fundamental stuff. Some people say
science says, right? That's what science says, right?
It may or may not be. I don't know. That's something from metaphysical debate. To say that a table is made up of small things doesn't mean the table doesn't exist. It could be both. True, right? You can have the parts and the whole at the same time.
That's kind of how we're seeing it as a table, but fundamentally it's just particles structured in a certain way.
What I'm saying it's a view. It's a view, but also it's also a view to say that there are the parts, they exist, but it's compatible with also saying the table also exists as an additional thing. That's why there's part and whole. It's not that there's part and there's no whole. Like it's part and whole. So that's another view. I'm not saying which view is right. Anyways, but there are Buddhists who say that, well, no, Buddhist view is everything, literally everything is empty. So it's not that there's no fundamental thing that's really actually is empty. Well, but then there's further debate. Okay, let's say everything is empty. Well, what do you mean by empty? Do you mean they don't exist? Well, it can't be. Nothing exists, right?
No
somebody would go that route. Somebody say, oh no, by saying that it's empty just means it's social constructs. It's a projection of our mind. Well, but does it mean that then our mind is actually fundamentally real? Somebody would say, well, no. Well, I said already, everything is empty. So it's gone and on and on. There are different branches. So that's why the reason I go through this is not because I have any even that it's not that I have a horse in this race. It's not that I have any particular view. I'm just saying that there are substantial differences of theoretical differences because they interpret certain theses in a very different way. They think about reality in different ways. So there are differences. But I guess there are similarities. Is that the kind of way of life they recommend? So they're not debating these kind of things about reality for the sake of it. They think, at least for Buddhists, they want to defend a certain way about thinking about reality because they would support different ways of life. I guess in the end of the day, there are some basic commonalities that, in a way of life, they recommend. The kind of detachment they advocate for, facing suffering as it is instead of escaping it. Sometimes there are people who think, Buddhism is about resolving the suffering. I don't read Buddhism that way. I think Buddhism ultimately is about like acknowledging that everything is suffering. There's no escape.
Life is suffering.
Everything is suffering. That means there's no escape. That's part of the wisdom is that people like to think that, there's suffering here. I want to escape and be happier, as if there's a place there's no suffering I can escape to. There is no such space. Everything is suffering. More important thing is to just face it up, describe it as it is, and don't have the suffering have grip on us. That's how I read some school of thought in Buddhism. There are other branches who thinks about things differently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I want to talk about like monks. Like, to me, it's always seemed kind of strange because it's kind of like you limit a large part. Like, that's just that.
Yeah.
Like, you limit a large part of experience in order to like be better at one experience. You know, I always kind of confused. But it's just to like just have a group of people you can talk and learn about.
Yeah,
But-
here's the thing that I don't know whether you remember we read something from the Upanishad in our class. Don't worry about the listener. I'm not going to. I'm
Pull
not
it
going to
out.
assume anything. It's more like I mean, Buddhists are not saying that everybody should just leave their home and live in monastery, right? It would not be sustainable. It's almost like there are people who would do that job. It's almost like the spiritual practice of division of labor. Some people's job is to be a monk. They are more suited to do that. The rest of us, we do our own life, but at the same time, we can do what we do in our everyday life to follow certain kind of Buddhist rules without actually going all the way to be a monk. So there's this interesting idea of division of labor. Not everybody has to do that. So as we read, like it's a very traditional idea in Indian philosophy. Like not everybody has to leave the house. Like there are people who live in the cycle of wealth and have families, have kids. There are people who leave everything behind. So there's a division of labor. I always find that very fascinating. The idea that because from a Western ethical or philosophical perspective, like when I say there's a good way of life, it's supposed to be for everybody. Like why would it be like somebody? It only work for somebody, not for everybody. So from my perspective, it's something very interesting and unique.
So they go to be a monk to escape the traps in life.
Yeah, well, it depends on. This is where it depends on which branch of Buddhism you're talking about. The kind of Buddhism that is most influential in China, because I'm interested in Chinese Buddhism, so that's the part of Buddhism that I'm more familiar with. They don't think about liberation as an individual project. So it's not like, to seek Buddhism, to seek liberation is because I want to be liberated. Well, part of it is, but at the same time, if you give up the idea that there's a substantive self, then actually you shouldn't think about it that way. There's no such thing as my suffering versus your suffering. If there's no ego, no self, no substantive self, there's no distinction between who's suffering. There's suffering, there's suffering. So that's why when a person becomes a monk, it's not because they become a monk in order to deal with their own suffering. There's no such thing as their own suffering. It's about being a monk so that they can eliminate suffering in the world. So that's why a monk is supposed to interact with people. To help them deal with or face their own suffering as well. So that's why, as I said earlier, it's a division of labor. It's not that different people have different hobbies. No, they are like in it together.
It's like shamans, like in American.
Like they need, like the monk need to be supported by people in the rest of the society as well. They can't. They grow food as well, but they also need the rest of the society to be functional. So it's all part of the entire project.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I feel like I never really thought about it that way, but it makes sense. I always thought like monks kind of like just did their own thing, and I honestly thought it was kind of like selfish.
Some branches do think about it that way. The Chinese Buddhists, the way the branch I described, would criticize the other branch exactly that way. It's like a too individualistic way.
Yeah. I was like, at least like help, other people. So self. What do you think the self is? Is it real?
I don't even know what that word means sometimes. So yeah, I remember I mentioned it to you. I work on Chinese philosophy in about self-knowledge. So I don't exactly work on the self because I actually don't know what is it. It's supposed to be a thing or the group of mental state that I have. I don't know. I'm more interested in self-knowledge, self-awareness. What kind of knowledge is that? It's different from scientific knowledge.
Yeah.
But somehow I feel like immediate information or awareness of what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. I don't collect data on that. Like nobody can come to me with data. Like here's some data. Let me update my self-awareness. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in that kind of knowledge, self-awareness, knowledge that way.
Like from where do you think you use your, like in what structure do you think about like the self? Like is it from like I guess is it from like more religious, more practical, more you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I kind of get where you're getting, where I get my inspiration from.
Yeah.
Like, do I just randomly
It's how you
ask a
think.
question? Yeah, self is just such, self and self-knowledge both, is such an elusive phenomenon. Actually, that's why I find it interesting. Like, there are people that, oh, I'm not interested in question, I don't know how to study. Like, I'm the opposite. Like, if I know the recipe of how to study something, well, you do it.
Yeah.
It's kind of already solved. Like, I don't care about.
Mhm.
I'm interested in a topic that I don't even know how to begin.
Mhm.
I guess that's why I attract me to philosophy. That's
Mhm.
also quite questions are like that.
Yeah.
So for me right now, I'm kind of like a nomad trying to attack in piecemeal fashion. So there are different weirdness in this phenomenon of self-knowledge.
Mhm.
I'll deal with it one at a time and see if something more holistic emerge out of it.
Mhm.
So I don't have like a plan.
Mhm.
Good. Yeah, I just run into new paradox. I'll try to see what I can say about it, and there's a next weird feature about self-knowledge. I'll deal with that and see in the end what comes out of it. So that's my approach to doing research. And as I said, some people are not like that. More productive, more successful philosophers usually more programmatic. Like I have a project step by step, but I'm just not like that.
Yeah, and success doesn't mean better. What's like a recent thing that you've been thinking about in terms of like those projects?
About the self-knowledge part.
Mhm.
So I've been working on. Let me see how I can like in a very quick way.
For sure. Take your time.
I've been thinking about so think about knowledge about not about the self, about something else. Let's say knowledge about tomorrow's weather, knowledge about the table in front of us, knowledge about the podcast. These kind of knowledge comes in degree of certainty. Like I know tomorrow's going to be sunny to a certain degree of certainty, something like that. My view is that when it comes to self-knowledge, about my knowledge about what I'm doing right now, like intentional action, suppose I'm intentionally kicking a table. I don't know, like I'm doing that. If I don't know, it's not an intentional action. That kind of self-knowledge don't come in degree of certainty.
Doesn't come with
Because you can't, what my view is, because you can't measure that kind of degree of certainty. So that's the kind of thing I'm working on. I know I could on it.
I want you to explain it a little bit more.
Yeah. So the thought is this. What a better way to explain is explain what I mean when I say I can't measure it. Is that like when it comes to like say my knowledge or my belief about tomorrow's weather, I come to a certain degree of certainty. Like how can you determine the degree of how certain I am? Well, here's one way hypothetically you can measure it. Is that throw me into a gambling situation. Ask me to bet on it. See how much money I'm willing to bet on that. The fact that tomorrow's going to rain or sunny. Depending on how much I'm willing to bet, you'll be able to determine how certain I am. The more certain I am, the more money I'm willing to bet, right? So that's the rough idea of what it means to measure degree of certainty.
Like prediction.
Yeah. So depends on how much I'm willing to bet on something. It would mirror or match or correlate with my degree of certainty. But my thought is that it doesn't work when it comes to first-person knowledge, self-awareness about what I'm doing. It's just about actually this argument doesn't work for other kind of self-knowledge. So why? Because if you ask me to bet whether I'm kicking a table right now, I would just decide to kick a table in order to win. I wouldn't be able to bet no matter how much money I will be able to bet on. I'll bet my life on it. Why? I'll be willing to go as much as that. Because why? Because I can make sure I win by making a decision. So that's why when it comes to action, you can't measure how certain I am about it by asking me to bet on it. Because I have direct control about whether I'll win or not. So that's why the whole idea of measuring degree of certainty about self-knowledge won't work. And that's why I say there is no such thing as degree of certainty. About what you're doing, either you know or you don't. There's no degree of certainty. So that's the idea that I'm working on. So that's a little bit more technical than the other work I'm working on. So I always have these two parts.
That's really interesting. So kind of like if you read, kind of like I used to read self-help books, and I was like, okay, like do this, but then I'm like, okay, well, when am I supposed to do it? Like, how am I supposed to do it? Does that kind of relate to like?
Yeah, I guess if I have to bring it back to something more practical, it's helpful. Actually, I'm glad you kind of maybe forced me a little bit to try to explain and put that in a more practical scenario is it actually helped me think about self-doubt. I'm a person with a lot of self-doubt growing up and still. And when I say I'm interested in self-knowledge, for the most part it's because I'm interested in self-doubt. And self-doubt is a very weird phenomenon. And because it's, in a way, it's hard to self-doubt. Like when I'm doing something, I know I'm doing it. It's weird for people to come up to you and say, "What are you doing, Derek? I'm kicking the table. Like, how sure are you?" I don't know how to answer that question. I know what I'm doing. Like, there's this weird sense of certainty about myself. It's hard to self-doubt when it comes to self-knowledge. But it doesn't mean that we can't be wrong, right? We can be wrong about self-knowledge, but for some reason, it's hard to self-doubt. It's hard to say I have a less degree of certainty about what I'm doing.
The ego.
So yeah, well, part of it's ego. Part of it is I want to argue that it's a real phenomenon. There is no such thing as degree of certainty when it comes to self-awareness. That creates an illusion that I'm certain about something. But it's not because I'm certain. It's just that psychologically you can't have a degree of certainty about what you either you believe you're doing something or you don't. It just does not come in degree. But we misunderstand that as meaning that I'm certain about it. So yeah, it's an illusion of certainty.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's partly because I'm interested in self-doubt, I guess.
So like you don't know where the parameters are, so you can't. Like, is that kind of what you're saying? Like, you don't know certainty. Like, you don't know what is certainty and what's not certainty.
So maybe what I was saying is something like, we seem to be very certain about ourselves when it comes to self-knowledge, what we are doing, as if we can't be wrong. But it might be a mistake. It's not that we can't be wrong. It's not that we are very certain about it. It's more like the question of certainty does not apply when it comes to self-knowledge.
Okay, I think I kind of get what you're saying. So like someone who has a bad habit, but they don't think it's a bad habit, they think it's a good habit. So kind of like they think it's a good habit, they're certain it's a good habit, but in reality it's damaging their body.
Oh, not exactly, but let me try it again. Here's the idea, is that when it comes to action, what you're doing, either you do it or you don't do it. It's purely a matter of your decision. There's no point in taking a step back and try to predict what you're doing right now. Try to self-manipulate.
Like before you do it, you try to
while
predict
you're
it?
doing it,
Why?
you try to second guess yourself, am I doing something or not?
Okay.
Actually, it's a fool's errand. Action is the kind of thing, either you do it or not. When you do it, you do it, you believe you're doing it. If you don't do it, you don't do it. There's no point, no such thing. It makes no sense to try to second guess yourself. Am I really doing something? Yeah, in a way, that's what I'm trying to say. There's no meaningful self-doubt in that sense.
Is that in the sense of, because when you're saying that, I'm thinking like, but what if you're unsure about you're gonna get the result you want? So it's kind of like,
yeah,
you know?
that's a different question. That's actually part of what I'm trying to do, is to separate two questions. Sometimes you mix it together. It's one thing to be sure, or not sure, to believe that I'm doing something. It's another thing to think that I'm successfully creating the end product I want to create. It's a different issue. Yeah, you can be uncertain about that. For example, people can ask you, like, what are you doing? Like, I'm not very good at basketball terminology. I'm good at, what are you doing, Derek? I'm shooting a three-pointer. Is it how you call it, three-pointer?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that I succeed in doing it, but I can still fail, but that's what I'm doing. I can do something, but I fail to achieve what I want to achieve.
Yeah.
So, the
But you're not
uncertainty,
second guessing.
yeah, you can be uncertain about the result, but there's no room for second guessing whether you're actually doing what you're doing. So you just have to commit, do what you do or you don't.
100%.
Yeah, either you do or you don't. That's it. Result, you can be unsure about the result. You can't be unsure about whether you're doing something or not.
Yeah, that's a good thing to think about and study. So then you can like, I don't know, portray it in ways that are useful to people. You know, like I feel like there is a lot of like doubt about whether you should do this, do that, because there's so many things saying do X, do Y, and people and things saying don't do X, don't do Y. So there's a lot of confusion about like where to put energy into, and on top of survival. It's like there is a lot of self-doubt right now. So like, how do you think society can improve right now? Like, what do you think is like, if you had to do one thing, like one thing that we should all like try working on, or something, it's something we have to like get, like, do we have to end like, lack of money, like, do we need to have more empathy? Like, what do you think is like something that's like kind of vitally missing in our society right now?
Yeah, I guess part of, in light of what I said earlier, I don't think we know more than we actually know. That applies to myself as well. So I don't want to pretend I know anything that would substantively change
Yeah,
it.
just in your opinion.
But I do think that, I guess it's echoing what I said at the very beginning, I do think ego is, I guess people learning to have a little less ego would substantively improve things. But it's not a small thing, it's just,
It's the old people, huh?
It's not the kind of thing people can just switch off. It's just, so I don't know whether it's a realistic thing to even ask of people. But yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So old people, their egos very much harder to change.
Oh, I don't mean just old people. I mean everyone.
Yeah.
Like I think young, old, I think it's something that infects everybody, including myself. I don't need to pretend to be.
Yeah. I guess I'll say old people because they hold more power. They're in positions of power, so they can enact more change than young people can. Like, I mean, everyone says young people have this power, and they do, but it's only to influence the older people. The older people ultimately make the decisions, unless it's like something that, like, young people force themselves into.
Yeah, I would not generalize it this way, because I can see it both ways. Some people grow older, they kind of learn to not care about a lot of things as much, so they become less rigid and less egoistic. So I guess it goes both ways. I don't know, like young means like a lot of people are more ambitious, chasing glory. Older folks, they're close to death. Some of them learn to let go of a lot of things. So it could go both ways. But also, of course, there are, what you describe is also real. Like there are people build the entire empire, the entire life when they're old. They just have to hold on to certain things. That's their sense of identity, their ego, their pride. They got pissed off very easily, get offended very easily. So yeah, the way I see it, it's not an age thing. It cut across every age, every generation. That's how I see it. Yeah.
True. It's like different. I feel like with the ages. I feel like say like 60-year-olds have a different type of ego than like kids nowadays. I think it's just kind of just the times you're in. And like, I feel like the older people have more like, I think it's because they've already climbed. So like where they are obviously still depend on like how much ego they have and all that. So I guess it's just a sense of like time, like they've had more time to expand and then like, see like what they can do in young people.
Right, yeah, I think you're right. Like it's ego built on things that they have accumulated versus ego
a potential
or now something like that, something more abstract.
Yeah, because like
being cool.
Being cool, the soft stuff. Yeah. I mean, like, especially when you're young, it's more important to have that. 'Cause like you said, that's what drives ambition, right? Like, I believe this is gonna blow up, and I'm gonna have millions of subscribers, right? Like, I need to believe that if I'm gonna like do this, So.
Yeah, and like that's what I said earlier, when people from another generation says, "Oh, this is stupid." Well, no, like different generation, different stage of life would focus on different things. It's completely natural. Like all those shit talker, like when they were young, it's not as if they didn't have ambition. Like do they not want to be famous? They want to, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just hypocritical of them to do that. Yeah.
Okay, so this next segment, viewer questions. Alright, so I asked them the story on Instagram, 𝐃𝐢𝐬 𝐄𝐲. People gave you some questions, kind of wanted to learn more about. So, first one is from Kirk. You kind of already answered it, origins of Buddhism and its influence in Asia. I guess you didn't answer the origin. Like, where did Buddhism come from?
Oh, from India. There's this dude who tried different. Who saw, well, according to the legend, he first saw suffering, got shocked by suffering. He was privileged, he was a prince, allegedly.
What's his name?
Siddhartha. So he was privileged and he had everything, and then like first saw suffering shocked him, death and illness shocked him, so he tried to find a way. He tried to, in school of thought, try to live alone in the forest, like we talked about in class. Didn't work, everything then was, so leave his family behind to seek the truth, and ultimately he reflect on stuff. I think when he was 37, 36, he discovered the way that is supposed to be Buddhism and stuff.
The best midlife crisis ever.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the origin. But then they start to build their own Buddhist community. Work got written, got spread across East Asia. Yeah. So I hope I'm not offending or mispresenting things. I believe Buddhism is not really a big thing in India anymore. It's actually, if there's like a major center, Buddhism is in East Asia, that is still very active.
Yeah. In India, it's probably like Hinduism.
Yeah, right now.
Yeah. Do you think Buddhism? Let me make sure this camera's still on. Got the notification. Okay, dope. All good. Cool. What was I saying?
You just finished the first question.
Okay.
I think.
I did. I was gonna ask. I forgot. We'll come back. Okay. Second question by 𝐉𝐸𝐺. Does religion act as a weapon in political agenda, causing unrest among people?
Yeah, people say that. It's funny you asked that, because I've been thinking about that, because I had a conversation with a friend about that, and sometimes I think religion is being true. There are a lot of religious conflict and war and stuff, but I don't necessarily think that pinning the origin on religion is the right way to think about it. It's more like it's more like people fight because they have different ways of life. Religions just happen to be one of the vehicles that create a way of life. Even without religion, there could be different ways of life, and people would still clash, right? So yeah, atheists with different communities, different tradition, different ways of life, they would still clash. They would still like hate immigrants. They would still hate some weird thing they don't understand. So I think in the end of the day, it's a clash of ways of life. I don't think religions so happen to be part of people's way of life. So I don't think it's really the issue is religion per se.
Yeah, itself.
That's how I think about it.
Yeah, because one thing when I think about religion and like the negative aspects of it, of the Crusades, I just think about how crazy they were. You know, like that was so many deaths on the name of religion. Like you said, you can't blame the thing itself. Like I was saying earlier, things like this start off as a good intention. Like say with Buddha, Jesus, like they want to help. They see suffering, and they see there's no way for people, a way for people to really understand it. So they create a system for it. But then as they passed and more people, you know, it's kind of the trickle effect. Like, you know, it starts off strong and then like spreads out, and you have people taking control, people using it to manipulate. Corruption happens, like in the Vatican and stuff. Like, it just kind of loses its kind of like, not meaningfulness, because like everything that's there is still there. It's just like the way it's like, what do you think? I can't really like figure out how to say it. Like, it becomes more ritualistic than
institutionalized. Yeah,
institutionalized.
I do think that's true. I guess maybe I should walk back 30% of what I said. I do think that there is something negative. If religion means institutionalized religion, I do think there's some, almost without exception, some oppressive element in it. And we're better off without that kind of highly institutionalized. But of course, I don't want to be overstating things, because having some kind of institution would create a sense of belonging for people, and it's important. Like, people would feel lost and lonely without that. And
true.
So it has its place in people's way of life, but at the same time, it comes with it like all kinds of scandals, oppression, sexism, sex scandal. Is it I think we're better off without the institutionalized side of it. But maybe I'm just
spirituality.
I'm just being naive about it. People need institutionalized.
But kind of like you were saying earlier, like when people feel lonely, they feel like they don't have a place. Like something we read about a lot, I watch videos about older people talking, right? like, man, we used to have like bowling teams. We used to have like, you know, like potlucks with our neighborhood, and like I feel like those things are kind of like starting to like die out in society. You know, like the kind of more community stuff. Because religion does create that sense of belonging, but then like you have to be in the religion, right? So I think like religion and culture are like probably the two main driving factors of society, and culture has just been getting like degraded, you know? Like, why do you think it's like going in that direction?
Yeah, my thought is the same as what I said before. My thought right now, partly because of my own research project right now, is probably it's because everything become business. The business side of things keep finding new ways to get benefit out of things. So I don't know. So everything becomes have to be about business. Otherwise, there's no room for it to exist.
Yeah.
So this kind of like potluck community gathering used to be within domain of religion, becomes part of all kind of subscription service, all kind of business avenue. So I guess that's the way I see it is probably that everything becomes business.
Yeah. True that. Alright, next question from Amaya. What subgroups / cults of schools of thought does he find particularly interesting and why?
Me? Okay.
Also, they're on the second page.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's the third one.
School of thoughts. Right now, I'm very into Confucianism because of what I'm working on, the Chinese philosopher who talk about emotional connection in the community. There's that. Cult. I'm not into any cult. I hope not.
What are some Chinese cults, like popular ones? Do you know any?
I do think this is going to piss off a lot of people. I do think a lot of these so-called traditional martial arts.
Interesting.
I would say all of them are counts.
Whoa.
Commercial, built out based on commercial needs for tourism. Yeah, I think most of them are counts.
Martial arts.
Let me say all.
Yeah,
just for the sake
of it. You heard it here.
Just for the sake of it. Controversial.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Taekwondo?
Familiar as in like I can do it, I can't do that.
You know about it?
Yeah.
Okay. I actually, like me and my whole family, all my siblings, we all started Taekwondo when we were very young. Me and my sister were twins. We started at 4 years old. Before we even knew English, like they literally, my mom would be there to translate. They would just be showing us. We had to copy. And I left it when I was 18, so 14 years. You know, we were in it. It really did shape me. And you're saying it's cults, like
I'm not trying to pick fight with Koreans. I'm just
No, but it's kind of like, is it kind of like the history that becomes cultish, the discipline aspect? Like, what do you mean cultish?
Yeah, I just mean like karate, taekwondo. I have no problem with them. That's fine. What I meant is something like there's some weird like martial arts style being developed and promoted, like Shaolin, being that kind of stuff. Wudang, that kind of stuff. This is gonna piss off so Jesus.
We love it. We love it.
So yeah, the cult as in it's really a brand. Like they would have like tourists go to their origin and see how they practice, the special way to carry water from the well. Like what the hell is that? Don't get me wrong. Like probably it's a healthy thing to do those exercise, but that's the end of it. Like being healthier, do some basic exercise. That's the end of it. But they sometimes speak of it, present it as if there's some mystical art, some special way to connect with people's body and shut down people just by pressing a button or something like that. Yeah, what the hell, man? Yeah. That's what I mean, the cultish side. Yeah.
I understand that. I think some of them do have that, but I think those ones are like the really low-key ones in the mountains type monastery. You know, those are the ones that got the pa and like you're done.
Yeah,
you know?
It's good for movie, I guess. The movies do help making it more mystical than it should be. Yeah,
it's just the movies are also from them.
Yeah.
So.
And the video games.
Yep. Alright, next question from Jess. Significance and impact of South Asian religions: Islam, Sikh, Hinduism. This is a very broad question.
I'm not sure. Impact, as in what impact, of course, is I can't speak on a lot of Islam, South Asia. I guess they spread to South Asia, but I wouldn't say Islam is South
Islam
Asia.
did?
It did, yeah.
What is it like called?
Islam, there are.
Oh,
community.
India.
Yeah, as well, right? It did spread in China as well, right? So
Is it still called Islam, or do they have a new name?
I believe they still call themselves Islam.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so the impact is of course enormous, right? So especially Islamic culture, the way it preserved a lot of knowledge, mathematical scientific knowledge in its golden age is massive. So it's as influential and impactful as any other religious or cultural tradition in the world. Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. Next one by Sean. The history of Sac State and its cultural significance. I know you're kind of new to it.
Yeah, I'm so new.
Do
I
some
don't
research?
know anything. I
No?
probably should know something about it, but I don't. Yeah, I really don't know anything about it. Maybe it's just my personality. I never care about where I come from. So that's why I said I didn't have a strong sense of belonging.
Nomadic.
Nomadic. Yeah, that's just who I am. That's why maybe I should look into it a little bit. Yeah, story of history. That's another thing I'm curious about, and also culture, I guess. I am very obsessed with ghost stories.
Ghosts?
Like allegedly real ones.
Uh-huh.
I always feel a little bit disappointing because when I'm growing up in Hong Kong, every single campus has a lot of like these rumors about this place you should go to at night. There's a little story. It's fun, but I don't think there are a lot of those in campus in the US, and it's disappointing. I try to spread it.
Yeah,
I tried really hard. It just never caught on.
The bridge, under the bridge at night on a certain
there's
day.
this last bus around campus. Nobody get on it. Just go on. They don't let any people go on it. Why? Why? There must be a reason. Right? So I try to spread rumors, but never caught on.
So you think ghosts are real?
No, I just find it fun. Horror story, it's my favorite.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Alright, next one by Jason. Do we create the meaning of our lives, or is it created for us?
I don't have an answer, to be very honest.
It's a tough question.
Yeah, I don't have an answer because I don't know what would count as a meaning of life.
Purpose?
I don't mean it as like a dismissive of this question. I mean this is an important question that I genuinely don't have an answer to because I don't know what's a proper way to approach it and interpret it.
I think it means like how do we find purpose? Do we find purpose, or is there a purpose for us?
And also like purpose, the reason why I don't have a trouble answering is because like even if we call it purpose, like what kind of purpose? When I leave this room, I will get pizza. That's a purpose. But I take it that's not what.
But life
mean,
purpose.
Right? For my entire life.
Yeah, like doing something that you feel like very attuned with. Like say you're an artist, like you're a painter, like and you do it, and you're like, this is what I can see myself doing forever.
I guess it can go either way, right? Sometimes people are born raised for a certain purpose, but that person himself or herself or themselves might not identify with the purpose, and they would have another plan for themselves. So yeah, I don't know which one would be the right purpose if that's how we think about meaning of life. So that's why I don't know how to answer that question. I have to think more about it. Maybe when I'm even older, I'll have a better sense.
The older you get. Alright, next question by Doraj. What makes something right or wrong? Good question.
So it has something to do with my view, which is very minority view within philosophy and ethics. I am a relativist. To a certain extent. I think at the end of the day, a lot of these moral norms is about rules that facilitate mutual understanding and coordination. So, that's what right and wrong. It's like different societies playing different games. So there are different board games with different rules that make it work. Not saying any rule goes. Some rules are just stupid. Some board games are just stupid. But it's about what kind of rule that would facilitate coexistence.
Makes sense.
So that's how I think about it.
There's a human one, and then there's like societal ones.
Yeah, sometimes in some society those rules include animals, some form of animals in it. and some society don't. And it's just different rules of mutual understanding and coordination. That's how I think about it.
Next one by 𝐿𝐵 why are we here on Earth at this time?
By accident.
By accident.
Really by accident.
Purpose.
Why is it on Earth? By accident. Why is it at this time? Because this time is by definition where I am at. That's what this means, the word this, right?
The way things are. Next one by 𝐿𝐵 what are some of the most influential or philosophical texts that you have read or studied?
There's a reason why I decided to pick up on the duty of teaching philosophy of India, because I really find the Upanishads very moving to me. I'm surprised by the fact that I'm moved by it as well, because I used to work on stuff that's more argumentative, structured, logical, these semi-religious texts. I would never guess that it would like move me. But that's one of the texts that moved me a lot.
Can you say it again?
The Upanishads.
Upanishads.
If you have been doing class reading, you
yeah,
know what
I have.
Yeah.
I want to say for the viewers. Upanishads.
So in Kant's reading, I disagree with most of the thing he says now already, but still it has been formative for me.
Yeah.
So, influential. Yeah.
Cool. Next one by Kem. Thoughts about homelessness in Sacramento?
Yeah, that actually breaks my heart when I see that. Well, I don't want to pretend to be a very empathetic person, but still it's sad, hearing how people got third-degree burn just by accidentally sleeping on the floor, those kind of thing. Yeah.
Sheesh.
And how people blame every issue on them. For example, my car got smashed in over Christmas, and then when I tell people about it, people immediately would say, "Oh, it's homeless." Obviously, it's not the homeless people. Why? Because they did not steal the bottled water, they did not steal my sleeping bag, they did not steal anything. What they steal my phone charger. That's the only. They didn't steal my changes. So it's just that it's clear to me, at least. I don't know. Maybe I'm naive. It's not the homeless folks.
Yeah.
But they always being a scapegoat of everything. So,
true.
Yeah. So
that's true.
Mostly, I've been doing some volunteer work.
Good.
Sometimes I hear the reason why people end up being there is that there are some housing complex that kick people out. Renovation out. Where are they supposed to go? Nowhere. So. Yeah, unfortunately. Hopefully we find a way out of it. I'm surprised that it's so bad here. I moved from Midwest. Chicago is expensive too, but I don't seem to feel it's as bad as it is here. So I don't know why. So
yeah, it's
smarter people would be able to. Hopefully, smarter people are invested in solving it. I don't know.
Hopefully. I think it's just growing overall in the world too as well. So, next one by Nathan. Why is it that younger individuals value relationships more compared to mature individuals?
I don't know whether it's the right way to interpret the question. That way is that I take relationship means romantic relationship. Yeah, that's actually something that puzzles me too. I'm not entirely sure it's a younger or mature or not. I don't get why people are so obsessed with romantic relationship. There are so many things that you can do. I don't know.
Sense of meaning.
I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just saying that it's a good thing among many good things. So I don't know. It's like music, for example. 9 out of 10 songs about romance. I don't know why. Is it much more mature folks? Are they not like that? I don't know. It seems that they are like that too. They're every movie they watch is romantic stuff. They always have to be something to ship for. I don't know. So I don't know. It seems like it's a universal thing.
Yeah, I think it more needs that younger people seek it, they need it. They feel sad when they don't have it. Whereas older people can be okay not having it and letting it come to them.
Why would the young people need it more?
I think it's because they don't really know who they are yet, or that's where they're going to derive their self-worth from.
Right. And do you think it's movies too? When you grow up watching all the Disney movies about shipping this or that, that's the only thing you know, right?
Yeah. Media is very, it's a form of manipulation, control. It puts these ideas in your head. And it's true for a lot of things, ideas, it reframes how you think about history, how you think about relationships with different countries, between people, and even subconsciously, if you keep seeing it, the same ideas being portrayed, you're gonna kind of like start to believe it. And it's really dangerous, and you know, it is a distraction from you figuring out things yourself.
Yeah,
you know?
and worse, people start building an identity out of it. Like,
Yeah.
not just believe it, but like, oh, it's part of who I am. Like,
Yeah.
So that's even worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, you have an enormous power when your podcast blow up.
Yep.
Media.
All right. Well, I think this is a good place to end. Thank
Yeah.
you very much. It was a
Happy
pleasure
to-
talking to you.
That's
Mhm.
cool. That's my first involvement in a podcast. So
Yep,
that's a cool experience for me as well.
Yep. Do you want to say any final remarks?
No, just say cool and yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Chill.
Alright, guys. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for watching the 𝐉𝐨𝐢𝐧 podcast.